The Hungry Man and the Smell of Bread. It was a quiet afternoon in a small village. The sun was warm, the streets were calm, and people were busy with their daily work. Some children played outside, some women carried baskets of vegetables. A few men were selling fruits, milk, and small items at the market. At the end of the street, there was a small bakery. The bakery was famous in the village. The baker baked fresh bread every morning and every afternoon. People loved the bakery because the smell of hot bread filled the whole street. Inside, the baker was busy. His face was red from the fire of the oven. His hands were covered with flour. He placed round loaves of bread inside the hot oven. The smell of warm, fresh bread spread outside the door. Anyone walking past could smell it. It was sweet, soft, and very inviting. At that time, a poor man was walking slowly down the street. He had no money in his pockets. His clothes were old and worn out. His shoes had holes in them. He looked tired, and his stomach was empty. He had not eaten since morning. When he reached the bakery, the smell of fresh bread caught him like magic. He stopped walking. His eyes closed, and he took a deep breath. The smell of bread made him feel a little happy. For a few seconds, he forgot his hunger. He thought, I wish I could buy one piece of bread. Just one piece. But I have no money. What can I do? So he simply stood outside the bakery. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. He breathed deeply again and again, enjoying the smell. It was free. He did not eat. He did not touch anything. He only smelled the bread. Some children passed by and laughed at him. Look at that man. He is eating the smell of bread. They joked. The poor man smiled weakly. He did not mind. At least the smell gave him comfort. But inside, the baker was watching him. The baker was not a kind man. He was proud of his bread, proud of his shop, and he did not like poor people standing near his bakery. When he saw the man smelling the bread again and again, his face turned red with anger. The baker muttered, How dare he? He is enjoying my bread without paying me. He thinks he can take for free what I worked so hard to make. He walked quickly out of the shop and shouted, Hey you! What are you doing here? The poor man opened his eyes and looked at the baker. Sir, he said softly, I am only smelling the bread. I am not touching anything. I am not eating. I have no money. But the baker became louder. No, nothing is free. Do you understand? Nothing is free. You are enjoying the smell of my bread, and you must pay for it. The poor man's eyes grew wide with shock. Pay? But sir, how can I pay for a smell? I did not eat. I did not take. I only smelled. The baker crossed his arms and shouted even more. You thief! You are stealing from me. You are stealing the smell of my bread. You think it is free, but nothing is free. By now, people in the street were stopping to listen. Some looked confused, some laughed quietly. They could not believe that the baker was angry about someone smelling bread. The poor man tried to explain again, Sir, please understand. I am hungry, but I did not touch your bread. I only smelled it. The smell is in the air. Everyone on this street can smell it. But the baker refused to listen. No, I worked hard to bake this bread. I used flour, water, salt, and firewood. I used my time and my energy. You are enjoying the result of my work. If you smell my bread, you must pay me. Nothing is free. The poor man lowered his head. He felt ashamed, but he also felt angry inside. He wanted to leave quietly, but the baker grabbed his arm and said, No. You cannot escape. I will take you to the judge. The judge will decide. He will tell you to pay me for the smell of my bread. The crowd followed them as the baker pulled the poor man along the street. People whispered to each other. Is this real? Can someone pay for a smell? This baker is too greedy. The poor man said nothing. He was weak and hungry. He only hoped the judge would be fair. And so, with the smell of bread still in the air and the angry baker holding his arm, the poor man was taken to the judge's court. This was only the beginning of the strange case that would teach everyone a lesson. Nothing is truly free. The baker held the poor man tightly by the arm as they walked quickly through the crowded street. The poor man felt embarrassed. People stared at him, whispering to each other. Some laughed, some shook their heads. Why is the baker so angry? One woman asked. He says the man stole the smell of bread, a boy replied. But how can anyone steal a smell? Another man muttered. The baker ignored them. His face was red with anger, and his grip on the poor man was strong. You will pay, he repeated. The judge will make you pay. Nothing is free. Finally, they reached the court. The court was a simple room with wooden benches, a large table, and the seat of the judge at the front. People were already waiting for their cases to be heard. When the baker arrived, everyone turned to watch. The judge, an old man with wise eyes and a long beard, looked up. He was known in the village for being fair and clever. He raised his hand to quiet the room. What is the matter here? He asked. The baker stepped forward quickly. Your Honor, this man is a thief. He comes to my bakery every day. Today, he stood outside and enjoyed the smell of my fresh bread. He has no money, but he enjoys my bread for free. That is not right. He must pay. The poor man shook his head sadly. Your Honor, I did not touch his bread. I did not take even one crumb. I only smelled the bread because I was hungry. I cannot pay, because I have no money. The judge stroked his beard thoughtfully. The courtroom grew quiet. Everyone leaned forward, curious to see what he would say. This was not a normal case. Nobody had ever heard of paying for a smell before. The baker insisted, his voice sharp, Your Honor, nothing is free. I worked hard. I bought the flour. I lit the fire. I baked the bread. The smell belongs to me. He enjoyed it, so he must pay me. The poor man's voice trembled. Sir, how can I pay for air? The smell is in the street. Everyone can smell it. I did not eat. I did not steal. The judge raised his hand. Silence. The room went still. The judge closed his eyes for a moment, thinking deeply. Then he opened them and spoke slowly. This is indeed a strange case. The baker says the man must pay for the smell of bread. The poor man says he has no money. Very well. We will solve this in a fair way. He turned to the poor man. Do you have any coins at all in your pocket? The poor man hesitated. He reached into his pocket and brought out 2 very small copper coins. They were old and dirty. They were all he had left in the world. His hands shook as he held them up. Yes, Your Honor, he said softly. I have only these 2 coins. The judge nodded. Good. Now, listen carefully. Hold the coins high in your hand. Now, let them drop onto the wooden table in front of me. The poor man obeyed. He raised his hand, then slowly opened his fingers. Clink, clink. The sound of the coins rang through the quiet courtroom. Everyone looked at the small copper pieces as they rolled and stopped on the table. The judge smiled. Did you hear that sound, baker? Yes, Your Honor, the baker replied eagerly. Excellent, the judge said. The poor man has paid you. He smelled your bread, and in return, you have heard the sound of his money. The smell for the sound. That is fair. The courtroom burst into laughter. Some people clapped their hands. Others shook their heads at the baker's foolishness. The poor man's eyes widened in surprise. He could not believe what had just happened. The judge had saved him, and he did not lose his last 2 coins. But the baker's face turned pale. He realized the judge had taught him a lesson. His greed had made him look silly in front of the whole village. The judge leaned forward and spoke firmly to the baker. You see, baker, nothing is truly free. But neither can you demand payment for what belongs to all. The smell of bread is carried by the wind. You cannot lock it up, and you cannot sell it. If you try, you will lose respect. Be wise, and do not let greed rule your heart. The baker lowered his head in shame. He had no answer. Slowly, he walked out of the courtroom, avoiding the eyes of the people who laughed at him. The poor man bowed to the judge with gratitude. Thank you, Your Honor. You have saved me. The judge smiled gently. Remember this lesson, my friend. Nothing is free. Everything in life has a price. Sometimes it is money, sometimes it is effort, sometimes it is respect. But never let anyone trick you into paying for what should belong to all. The poor man left the courtroom with light steps. He was still hungry, but his heart felt full. The people outside smiled at him, some even offered him bread. And everyone in the village remembered the lesson from that day. Nothing is free. The court was over, but the story of the poor man and the greedy baker spread quickly through the whole village. People could not stop talking about it. Some laughed when they remembered the sound of the 2 little coins on the judge's table. Others repeated the judge's wise words, the smell for the sound. That is fair. The poor man walked slowly down the street. His stomach was still empty, but his heart was lighter. He thought about what had just happened. I had nothing, yet I did not lose my last coins. The judge saved me. He showed everyone that justice is greater than greed. As he passed by the market, some kind villagers stopped him. One woman gave him a piece of fruit. A man offered him a small loaf of bread. The children who had laughed at him before now smiled kindly. For the first time in many days, the poor man ate a little food. Meanwhile, the baker returned to his shop. But things were different now. People looked at him with cold eyes. Some refused to buy bread from him that day. Others whispered, "That is the man who wanted payment for the smell of bread." The baker felt ashamed. Inside his bakery, he sat alone, his face in his hands. He thought about what the judge had said. Be wise, and do not let greed rule your heart. Those words echoed in his mind again and again. For the first time, the baker began to realize that his pride and his greed had made him foolish. He had wanted money for something invisible, something that belonged to everyone. And now, instead of respect, he had lost honor. That night, the village was quiet. The poor man sat under a tree outside the town. He had no home, but he looked at the stars and thought deeply. The judge said nothing is free, he whispered. Yes, it is true. The woman who gave me fruit worked hard to grow it. The man who gave me bread used flour and fire. Even kindness has a cost, because people must give time, effort, or food. Nothing is free, but he also understood something else. Even if nothing is free, goodness spreads. When someone gives freely, they pay the cost themselves. That is what makes kindness valuable. The next morning, the village was alive with chatter. At the tea stall, men discussed the case. At the well, women laughed. About the clever judgment, children repeated the story to one another, acting it out as a game. The whole village had learned the lesson. Nothing is free. The judge himself was satisfied. He had not only solved a strange problem, but he had also taught everyone wisdom. He often said that real justice was not just about punishment, it was about teaching people how to live rightly. The baker, after a long night of thinking, decided to change. When he opened his shop that morning, he saw the same children outside, watching and smelling the fresh bread. Normally, he would have shouted at them to go away. But today, he did something different. He smiled. He cut a few small pieces of bread and gave them to the children. Here, eat, he said softly. The children's faces lit up with joy. Some villagers passing by were surprised. They whispered to each other, perhaps the baker has changed. The baker realized that sharing did not make him poorer. Instead, it made him feel richer inside. He remembered the poor man's eyes, hungry but honest, and he thought, I must never let greed blind me again. As for the poor man, he became known in the village. People respected him not for money or power, but for his patience and humility. Some farmers offered him work in their fields. Soon, he had enough food each day and sometimes even a little money to save. Whenever people asked him about the judge's words, he repeated them carefully. Nothing is free, everything has a cost, but kindness is the most beautiful cost of all, because it comes from the heart. Years later, the story of the baker, the poor man, and the judge was still told in Greenwood Village. Parents told it to their children. Teachers told it to their students. Travelers carried the story to other towns. And every time someone smelled fresh bread on the street, they remembered the sound of 2 coins hitting a wooden table and the wisdom of a fair judge. Sparkle's moral, final reflection. Nothing in life is truly free. Every gift has a cost. Money, time, effort, or sacrifice. But when people choose to pay that cost through kindness, love, or sharing, the world becomes better. The smell for the sound. That is fair, and that simple judgment became a timeless lesson for all.